Hi everyone, welcome. I hope you're coming back for after viewing the other episodes. This is episode 4 of the Canton CvrUp. We went through, in the first episode, we went through the Commonwealth's statement of case, what they believe to have happened that night that John O'Keefe was found unconscious on the lawn of another Boston police officer, a fellow Boston police officer's lawn. And also, what was I going to say? So it's episode 2, we talked about the defense's arguments against a lot of what the Commonwealth had said, and they pointed out a lot of inconsistencies that were in the statement of case. And then in episode 3, we did a kind of a who's who involved in this case. I gave you a presentation, which this episode we're going to have a presentation too, so it's going to be mostly voiceover. But I did a presentation of the characters, all the people involved, or all the main people involved that we're going to talk about, or we've already talked about, but we kind of did a family tree of how everybody's related. So if you'd missed that episode, please go back and watch that, because it really helps you understand like who's who of everybody. All right, so with that being said, we are now on episode 4, and we're going to walk through the timeline. And there's a lot of, let's just walk through the timeline, and you'll see a lot of it is based on witness statements or video footage that we have or phone data that we have. So it's all the stuff on this timeline is, for the most part, corroborated or in a statement somewhere. So whether it's true or not may not be at hand. Like it might be, a statement that somebody said and it might not be true, but at least, we're giving you the timeline of how the night lays out, and you'll see if there's inconsistencies and whatnot. So let's, let me hide myself and dive in. So we are talking about the timeline. We've got, I hope you can see my mouse here. We've got Karen and her attorneys here. We talked about them in the last episode. This is Jen McCabe, who Googled house long to die in cold. She misspelled that, and we'll get into that a little bit later in this episode. And we've got some evidence here, some shards of the taillight that were found, the broken cocktail glass, John's Nike shoe. This is Brian Albert, the homeowner. And here's a warrant arrest, or an arrest warrant for Karen Reed. And then where is Chloe? Here is Chloe, and, well, not an actual picture of Chloe, but she represents Chloe. And where she is. We all wonder where she is, because she's not around. All right, so next up. Oops. Here we go. Okay. So in order to talk about the timeline, we need to talk about the locations involved. And we will talk about these locations and in the timeline and describe or explain, when people arrive and leave these particular locations. So we're going to start the night off with, I believe it's Julie Albert and, or maybe it's Nicole, I can't remember now. Well, one of the women, Alberts, they started off the night at 7:30. That's where our timeline begins, at C.F. McCarthy's, which is in Canton on Washington Street. So that's location 1. And we're going to move on to location 2 a little later in our timeline for the Waterfall Bar and Grill, which is approximately a 2-minute walk. According to Google Maps, it's approximately a 2-minute walk from C.F. McCarthy's to the Waterfall Bar. And then after that, our third location is 34 Fairview Road, which is Brian and Nicole Albert's home, as we know from going over this case already. This is the location of where John's body was found lying unconscious, face up in the snow. So this is our third location, and we're going to have to remember or keep in mind it's about a 5-minute drive from location 2, the Waterfall Bar, to the Albert home. So that is where they go after the Waterfall Bar closes for the night. Everybody heads back to the Albert home, as we know, around midnight-ish, 12:30, and arrive at location 3, the Albert home. 5-minute drive. All right, so we did go over the map last time, but I added some details here. So again, we're going from the Waterfall Bar and Grill, which is right here. You can see my mouse circling it. It's right here at the bottom. So then they go to the Albert home, which is, as we said, a 5-minute drive. And I have corroborated through court documents that this was Karen and John's route to 34 Fairview Road. They took Washington down towards Dedham Street in Washington, which is what is given in the statement of cause. And then they turned down Chapman Street and turned right onto Fairview Road. And then we know somewhere along the lines, Brian Nagel is coming this way down Chapman Street and turns left onto Fairview shortly thereafter Karen, because he saw Karen's car. And he described it in his statement, which we will get into in another episode. So we're going to do all the statements. We're going to do everything. Like, we're going to cover this as much as possible in as much detail, because there's a lot of details that we need to go through. So our timeline starts January 28th. It's a Friday of 2022. And yeah, it's Nicole Albert, who is the homeowner. She and Brian Albert own the home, 34 Fairview Road. So she arrives at the Waterfall Bar with her sister, Julie. And I believe this to be actually Julie Albert, and I think they mean sister-in-law Julie Albert, but it doesn't say that in the documents. It said sister, so I'm going to leave it as sister, but I think it's Julie Albert here. All right, so 7:30 p.m. Nicole arrives with Julie at the Waterfall Bar. So that's location 2. We start at location 2 for Nicole Albert, but John walks into C.F. McCarthy. John, our victim, he walks into C.F. McCarthy's bar at 7:37 p.m. So that's where our victim begins, as location 1. Remember, he starts at C.F. McCarthy's, and then he's going to head to Waterfall and then to Brian and Nicole's home. And Nicole and Julie are already at Waterfall. They start their moment there, or they start the timeline there. Sorry, I just wanted to go back and correct myself because I said it wrong. All right, so at 8:45 p.m., so a while later, Julie Albert texts John to come to the Waterfall Bar. So we know Julie Albert is there, so that's why I think this should be sister-in-law Julie Albert. Walks into Waterfall Bar. Or I'm sorry, Julie Albert texts John to come to the Waterfall Bar at 8:45. Shortly thereafter, at 8:51 p.m., Karen Reed walks into C.F. McCarthy's to meet John at the bar. So John's there with some other friends, and he's partying and hanging out with them, while Julie and Nicole are apparently at the Waterfall bar and saying, "Hey, where's John? Let's text him and tell him to come on by." So, but then Karen, 8:51, comes in. She comes into the bar and meets with John. According to Commonwealth documents. So I take these with a grain of salt just because reading through the documents, I trust very little. But that's my opinion. But I put them on here because it's part of the timeline and we're going to go through every little bit. So according to the Commonwealth, anytime it's Karen getting a drink, this is according to the Commonwealth stating that they have it on video surveillance, but we have yet to see the surveillance. So that's why I'm just saying I'm hesitant that these are to be true and to be fact, but that's why it's on the timeline because it's important to note. So at 8:58 p.m., the bartender hands Karen a drink. It's believed that she's drinking vodka sodas all night. It's a clear cylinder drink that she's drinking out of, and the liquid is clear, and she has a lime in it. That is the description of the drinks that she's getting. All right, so 2 minutes later, Jen and Matt McCabe arrive at the Waterfall Bar. So they arrive at location 2 to meet up with Nicole and Julie Albert. Jen and Matt are, as we stated, Jen is sisters with Nicole. Like, they are actual sisters, for sure. So Jen and her husband meet up with her sister and what I believe is the sister-in-law of Nicole. All right, so they meet at the Waterfall Bar. 9:15, 15 minutes later, John hands Karen a drink. So this is 17 minutes after she arrives at the bar. They're saying that John hands Karen another drink 17 minutes later. So she finished her drink in 17 minutes or less, and now she is getting another drink. It's not impossible. I'm just pointing things out. And then Karen receives a shot at 9:20. So at 9:20, she receives what we believe is to be a shot. It's a clear liquid, and we believe that she pours it into her glass. Anytime that she receives these shots, it is described that she pours it into her glass. Sorry, I'm trying to get a sip of my coffee here. All right, so at this point, 9:20 in the evening, Karen's had 2 drinks and now a shot. Then at 9:33, so not much later than the first shot, she receives another shot. At 9:57 p.m., a bartender hands her another drink. So another tall cylinder glass with clear liquid and a lime. So presumably a vodka soda, which is what I believe she was drinking, and people said that she was drinking. So now she arrived at the bar at 8:51, so within almost an hour, she's had 3 drinks. I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3 drinks and 2 shots within an hour. Okay, I'd be on the floor. All right, so now we move on to the next time frame. We're still on January 28th in the evening of that Friday in 2022. So now Brian Albert arrives at the Waterfall Bar. He is the homeowner, him and Nicole. I just like to repeat things because I know it's hard. There's so many names and I like to give you more context. So Brian and Nicole Albert own the home, 34 Fairview. Now, Brian, it said, we'll go through all the statements, but in one of the statements, it said that, Brian and Nicole entered the bar together at this time, and then others say that he came in from out of town from the airport or whatever. He just came in and met them at the bar. So that is up for debate, but putting it in there, Brian Albert arrived. We definitely know Brian Albert arrives at the Waterfall Bar at 10 p.m. All right, so 10:22, which is now about 30 minutes later, Karen receives another shot. 10:29, She just received a shot at 10:22, and now 10:29 she receives another shot. I can't even keep up anymore. There's too many. All right, so at 10:40, then Karen and John leave C.F. McCarthy's, and it is described by witnesses and in the statement of case that Karen left C.F. McCarthy's with a drink in her hand. So she walked out of C.F. McCarthy's with her drink because I guess she didn't finish it and she wanted to bring it to the next bar. So at 10:41, we see that Julie Albert sends her last text to John. I'm sure it's like telling him to come to the bar or where they're at or something. We don't know the context, but we're assuming that it has something to do with that. And then at 10:54, John and Karen finally walk into location 2, which is the Waterfall Bar. So they've made it to location 2, 10:54 p.m. All right, so some other things to note. Karen was observed on video surveillance walking into the Waterfall Bar with her drink in her coat from the previous location. So she was hiding it, apparently, in her coat, and she pulls it out when she arrives at the Waterfall Bar. Also important to note is that Karen was also observed, quote, consuming 2 additional drinks, 1 shot, and 1 mixed drink, for a total of 9 drinks between the 2 establishments. And that's coming from, I believe it was the statement of case. I should have put that on there. So that's coming from the Commonwealth court documents themselves, saying that she was observed drinking 9 drinks throughout the night. And she only started at what? I don't know. She walked in at 8:51, and then by midnight she's had 9 drinks or so. That's what they're saying. Okay. And then another thing that's important to note is that there were no timestamps of these drinks that she received at the second bar. So they say that she was on camera receiving 2 additional drinks, 1 shot and 1 mixed drink. So, but we don't see that on camera, and we don't have camera of any of this camera footage. But what specifically is noteworthy is that there are no timestamps noted for the second bar. In the first bar, there are the timestamps that I have laid out here. Those are within statements or through the statement of cause, but because they actually gave a time. But anything that didn't have a time, I kind of question, because you usually give a timestamp, especially when you're laying out your statement of what happened. But anyways, the next thing that I thought was noteworthy is that all witness statements reflect that Karen was not intoxicated. She didn't appear to be intoxicated. Nobody said she was intoxicated before, at the bar during this time frame. They said she appeared fine. And then the alcohol consumption of the other attendees is never actually noted anywhere. So I find it a little off-putting. It's like, okay, you guys were all drinking, and the only person whose alcohol consumption that we're talking about is Karen's, when there's possible other suspects involved in this case. So it just irks me that her alcohol consumption is the only one that is listed when everyone was drinking that night, and who knows what else. I'm not accusing anybody. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that everybody was out drinking and having a good time, and nobody else's alcohol drinks were noted. So anyways, moving on to the next time frame. We're moving on to midnight to 12:15 a.m. Now we're on January 29th. So we've moved on to Saturday, 12 a.m. Nicole, this is according to their statements, Nicole Albert leaves the waterfall and meets her husband and the McCabe's. So she meets Brian and Jen and Matt back at 34 Fairview Road, according to statements at 12 a.m. Also at 12 a.m., Jen McCabe's phone location is still in proximity to the waterfall bar. Important to note. This is coming from her geolocation data. We have an expert who examined the phone data, and we'll go through that in an episode all by itself. So there's a lot to uncover there. But anyway, so her phone is still saying that she's at the waterfall, but according to all their statements, they're saying that they get home around midnight. So, all right. Also at midnight, Ryan Nagel receives a text from his sister, Julie. So that's Julie Nagel, we talked about, is a friend of Brian Albert Jr.'s. So Brian Albert Jr. is back at the house, and he's got his friend Julie Nagel over. They're hanging out, doing whatever. And she's about ready to go home. So she texts her brother, according to Ryan Nagel's statement, and wants a ride home. Ryan is the guy with the friend with the F-150 pickup, and they come together with Ryan and his friend who's driving, and then his wife. So they come, or they get the text around midnight. According to Julie's statement, though, at midnight she calls her brother for a ride. So there's a little inconsistency there, but not really a big deal. But just that is how it was told. All right, so 12:10 a.m., Karen walks out of the waterfall bar with two females. Doesn't say who. It says she was found on video surveillance walking out of the bar with two females. I presume that it's Nicole and Jen, or Jen and, I don't know, but it's somebody from their group. So that's 12:10. At 12:11, John walks out of the waterfall bar with his cocktail glass in his hand. So that is, according to statements, he had his glass in his hand when he walked out of the bar. He met up with Karen when he walks out, and then they start walking to their car to leave. At 12:13 a.m., Jen McCabe's phone location finally leaves the waterfall. So remember, she says, and Nicole Albert says, that they all left the waterfall and they're getting home around midnight. But Jen McCabe's phone location is leaving the waterfall 3 minutes after Karen walks out of the waterfall with two females. Blah, blah, blah. Let me say that again. 3 minutes later, after Jen's phone leaves the waterfall, 3 minutes before Jen's phone leaves the waterfall, is when Karen is seen on video surveillance walking out of the bar with two females, which I think might be Jen McCabe and Nicole Albert or Julie Albert, one of them. Anyways, so Jen's phone location leaves the waterfall 12:13. At 12:14, John sends Jen McCabe a text, "Where to?" And immediately after she receives it, Jen calls John, but it's deleted from her phone call log. So anytime it says deleted here, that is saying that it's deleted from Jen's phone. Jen McCabe went through and deleted a bunch of stuff on her cell phone. That once the forensic upload was done and analyzed, they found that there were many calls, texts, screenshots that she deleted in the same time frame that all this is going on, and searches on her Google search or her Safari, whatever she used to search on her mobile device. All right, so 12:15 a.m., Karen's SUV, a black SUV, is seen traveling on Washington Street. We can presume it's Karen's, but we don't know. So remember, they went that long way to go to the house because I believe her car was already probably facing that way, and so they just took that way. All right, so 12:15 a.m., Brian Nagel arrives at 34 Fairview Road. And this is according to his grand jury testimony. This is his approximate time that he arrived at 34 Fairview. So it is approximate. It's coming from his verbal and mental recollection of what happened. Okay. So also at 12:15, we are told in witness statements that Caitlin Albert is picked up by her boyfriend Tristan. So we're being told Caitlin isn't home. The children of Brian and Nicole. So Caitlin and Brian Jr. Brian Jr. is at home with Julie Nagel, and Caitlin's at home, but she's leaving. She gets picked up with boyfriend Tristan. All right, so 12:17. The SUV is seen on surveillance driving in the direction of 34 Fairview. So still coming down that Washington and nearing that Dedham and, well, it's really Chapman and Washington, but they said Dedham. But it's Chapman that she turns on. So she's nearing that intersection. At 12:18, Jen McCabe's phone location finally arrives at 34 Fairview Road. So they probably took the shorter route, and she gets there with her phone. These are corroborated with the geolocation data. So with the download, the forensic download. So 12:18, her phone arrives at Fairview. And then also at 12:18, John calls Jen, and it's answered, but this is deleted from her phone call. So he's probably asking more specific questions about where this home is, because they're probably looking for it and a little lost, or just wanting some reassurance that they're going in the right direction. So 12:19 a.m., John's phone first pings near 34 Fairview Road. So now his location is nearing where Jen McCabe's phone is. At 12:24 a.m., John's phone location finally arrives. So it takes them a little bit longer to get there, but they finally get there at 12:24. So Jen gets there at 12:18, John gets there at 12:24. At 12:27, so 3 minutes after they arrive, or after his phone arrives, we should say. It might not be specific, like exact, but these are where they are in proximity to when I say the phone location. All right, so 12:27 a.m., Jen texts John, here, question mark, exclamation point. So I don't know if she's just asking, like, are you here yet? Or if she's saying, I'm here. But either way, she's saying here. I believe she's probably asking, like, are you here yet? Like, what's taking you so long? And then at 12:19, Jen calls John. And this is the last call that she ever makes to John. And it is answered. Okay, so, well, it's the last call that she has with John where it's answered. Because she does call him several times more throughout the night. But this is the last time that she speaks to him, or at least over the phone. And she deletes this from her call log. Moving on to 12:30 a.m., we are told from grand jury testimony that Colin Albert finally returns home. This is back to his home where he and John share, a block. I don't know exactly how close in proximity, but they're, in the same vicinity, because on the same block, most likely, because Colin and him kind of had a beef. Colin would trash his yard constantly, and John would ask him not to, nicely. And, I don't know. I don't know what it escalated to. And I don't know how innocent John was in all of it either. I'm not accusing him of anything, but I'm just saying, like, I don't know what the escalation was, what the fight between them was. Maybe Colin was just a punk kid. And from all appearances, it does seem that way, because looking at his social media and things like that, he's kind of, a hothead and wants to fight everybody. I don't know. So he just seems a little much. Anyways, going on to the next part of the night. 12:31 a.m., Jen texts John, pull up behind me. 12:37 a.m., we have footage from the Canton Library missing. So this is important to note because if Karen's taillight was damaged or wasn't damaged, we might be able to see that from the footage on the Canton Library or from the Canton Library that night. But this specific 2-minute time frame where she would have been driving past it is somehow mysteriously missing. So think of that what you will. 12:40, Jen texts John hello. So she still has not seen John. So remember, John's phone arrives at 12:24, and she's still, it's 12:40, 12:41. She's still calling him, texting him, and he's not answering. So 12:40, she sends a text hello. And then we hear at 12:41, Karen arrives at John's house, and we know this because she's leaving a voicemail for John because she was waiting, remember, outside of the Fairview home to find out if it was okay for John to attend this party or not because she wasn't sure. And she wasn't feeling well, so she was going to go home, but and she was uncomfortable probably being there because she didn't know if they were invited or not. So she was going to go home. So she was sitting in the car waiting to hear back a text or a call from John saying that it was okay. And she never did. So she kind of angrily was like, whatever. He got caught up in what he was doing and forgot to text me again. And because he had a habit of, getting drunk in the middle of the night and then not coming home or not calling her, whatever it might be. And so she was kind of, rightfully so, kind of angry about that. Was it angry enough to kill your partner? Probably not, but she was angry about it. But who knows? People probably have murdered for less. Anyways, sorry, my mouth is dry. I need some water here. All right, so Karen leaves a voicemail on John's voicemail. As she's leaving the voicemail, we hear her high heels on the garage floor, and it sounds, like she's talking in a garage, like an echoey, whatever. So that's when she was leaving the message. She's walking into the house, and that's corroborated. She gets home at 12:41, calling John, asking him what the hell happened. Talk to me. 12:40, and she was probably saying hey, I got tired of waiting, I'm going to bed. And call me when you need to ride home or something. I don't know, I'm speculating what the actual voicemail was, but that's what I would assume things would be said. Okay, so 12:41, Jen McCabe calls John twice and both go unanswered, and she deletes it from her phone log. At 12:42, Jen texts John, where are you? So at this point, I think she's starting to get worried. I don't know. Then at 12:43, Jen calls John again unanswered, and she deletes it from her call log. 12:45, Jen observes, in her statement, she states that she observes the SUV pull away. So she's stating that she saw the SUV pull up and sit there for a little while. We'll read her statement later. And then she sees it drive away, pull around, she can't remember, pull away, drive away. I don't remember what her exact words were, but, and leave. So she says she actually watched it leave at 12:45. But we have actual evidence that Karen is home at 12:41. So, I don't know. 12:45, Jen, also 12:45, when she is observing the SUV pulling away, she also texts John hello. And then at 12:46, a minute later, Jen calls John unanswered and deleted. Moving on to the next portion of the night, Jen calls John again at 12:47. So here she's going 41, 42, 43, 45, 46. Like she's 47, 50, 12:50. She's calling him again and it goes unanswered. 1 a.m. All guests leave Fairview, according to statements. So 12:50, she calls John one last time frantically. And then at 1 a.m., according to all the witness statements, everybody leaves. All the guests leave at 34 Fairview. And would have driven past the area where John would have been laying had Karen hit him. So they would have seen him, most likely. Out of all the guests that were there, somebody would have seen him. Chances are. All probability. So, that's 1 a.m. They all leave, according to statements. 1:30 a.m., according to Brian Higgins' statement, remember, he's the ATF agent, he says that he leaves 34 Fairview Road and goes into Canton PD to work and do some paperwork, administrative work, which is a little suspicious to me. I don't know about you guys. Let me know what you think about that. So he's an ATF agent. He was out drinking all night with this group of people. And at 1:30 a.m., after leaving the after party of being out at the bar, he goes to Canton PD to go work. Interesting. Anyways, also at 1:30 a.m., Jen and Matt McCabe are driving a bunch of the guests home. Those include Julie Nagel and Sarah Levinson. So according to their statements, they drove those two girls home. At 1:47 a.m., Jen's phone location finally leaves Fairview Road, though. So she's stating at 1:30 a.m. they're already out and about driving, but her phone says otherwise, and she's still at Fairview Road up until 1:47 a.m. And then at 2:03 a.m., Jen's location finally moves down the road, down Lawrence Street, and this is nearing John's residence. So at 2:03 a.m., they're getting close to John's house. So that is interesting because remember, Colin lives near John. So they might have been driving Colin home. I don't know, I'm just saying. If Colin was in that house, which they admit that Colin was in the house, but they said that he left before everybody arrived, and or at least that's what they implied, and then they said in the grand jury statement that he was already home by 12:30. So, but I don't know where Sarah Levinson and I don't know where Julie Nagel live. I'm just saying that, we're seeing that Jen's phone location is down the road from John's house, which is where she's heading this way to Leonard Way at 2:04 a.m. and then her course reverses. So in my opinion, and I'm not accusing anyone, I'm not saying anything, I'm saying this makes me think that Jen might have brought Colin home. And this family has been protecting Colin from day one, saying Colin was never in the house, and then we find out Colin was in the house. Like, we have proof of it, and there's other, they've really been protecting Colin. So I think Colin is I don't want to say. There's a reason why they're protecting Colin. I'm just going to say that. There must be a reason why they're protecting Colin so desperately. But I'll just leave it at that. I'm not implying, I'm not insinuating, I'm not harassing witnesses. We'll get into all that, but I'm just saying things are suspicious on their end. So, okay, at 12, she reverses course. So she's near John's house, and then she reverses. And then at 2:12, she arrives at her residence, or at least her phone does, so we're assuming she does as well. At 12, I'm sorry, 2, I keep saying 12, at 2:15 a.m., Brian Lucky Loughran picks up his plow truck. So he states in his statement with police, he picks up his plow truck to begin plowing that night because it's snowing. There was a light dusting earlier when everybody was leaving the bar, and now, it's enough that Lucky can go out and make some money going and plowing the streets of Canton. So our next time frame, 2:25 to 5:05. We kind of skip a bunch of time, but we'll see why. Okay, so 2:25 a.m. Jen, remember she's at home now. She sends 2 text messages. We don't know who the recipients are, but we just know that she's confirmed to have sent 2 text messages during this time. And then at 2:26 a.m., she deletes 2 screenshots. Okay. And then at 2:27 a.m., Jen searches how long does it die? Let me say that again. Jen searches house long to die in cold. She misspelled how. She put HOS, and that's a big deal because it comes up like later. But so according to her phone data, she searched how long to die in cold, basically. And we're going to get into that in another episode and what comes up when you search that, and we'll talk about the missing data and things like that. But just remember this. So she searches this at 2:27 a.m. At 2:30 a.m., Lucky sees a Ford Edge parked in front of 34 Fairview, and he states that he noticed it remained there for at least an hour, if not more. So around 2:30 a.m., the Ford Edge was parked right about where Karen supposedly hit John or left him to die. So this is key witness statement. This is a key statement here from Lucky, that he saw the Ford Edge, because if you think about it, and remember in my last episode I showed you that the gate opened up and someone could just carry a body from the gate to that spot, making it look like he died, somebody hit him on the street. Well, in order to do that, they would have had to have hidden it somehow. So most likely they could have parked that Ford Edge right there. And this is not my theory. This is Turtle Boy came up with this because he visited the scene so many times and he saw the gate and he was like, somebody could just walk body right here. So they literally could have, parked a car right there and had some people, come out the back gate with a body and leave his body there. So that's why this is really important. And Lucky's statements aren't found out until way later. And Turtle Boy actually uncovered this plow driver's whereabouts and found him and got these statements from him. And then it wasn't until after that that the police went and interviewed him. And they were making it seem like, no, the streets weren't plowed that night by Canton or whatever. So anyway, so Lucky sees the Ford Edge at 2:30 a.m. for about an hour. At about 4:30 a.m., Karen wakes up John's niece looking for John. She's asking, have you heard from him? I haven't heard from him. Let's try to find him. Let's look for him. So by 4:53, which there is a time gap in here, and I'm not exactly sure why, but maybe they were looking for a phone number or something, because Karen didn't know these people. She didn't have anybody's numbers to call. So she had to wake up the niece to get Jen McCabe's number, because the niece is friends with the McCabe kids. So she gets the number from the niece, and the two of them call Jen and ask Jen, have you seen John? Where's, we haven't seen him, he's not home, type of thing. So after they get off the phone, Jen calls John, but it goes unanswered, and this is deleted. So Jen is calling John again, like her calls to John continue. They start up again, and she'll continually call him throughout the night. You'll see. It's very odd. So after Jen and Karen get off the phone, Jen calls John. All right, so then again at or 5 a.m., Carrie Roberts states that she received a call from Karen Reed, stating to some effect like, John's dead, I know it, a plow hit him, or something. So those are what Carrie Roberts had quoted Karen as saying in this phone call. And then at 5:04 a.m., Jen calls John again, goes unanswered and deleted. So she continually calls him. At 5:05 a.m., Karen calls Jen unanswered. And then right away, Jen calls Karen. They talked for a little bit, deleted. So did she delete? Yeah, she deleted the first one too. So she deleted the unanswered one, and then she deletes the one where it took place. They spoke for a couple minutes or whatever, a couple seconds, minutes. Most of these calls are very, very short, if any of them aren't answered. 5:07 a.m., Karen's SUV is seen reversing into John's SUV in the driveway. So remember, this is where Karen most likely cracks her taillight. And there is video of this. I'm going to have to link it. I'll link it in this video. So you can see that in the description below. So you can see Karen backing up into John's SUV. You can decide for yourself if you think she does or not. It's light. It looks very light if she does. And many people have analyzed this video, and most people say that it does look like she did hit it. And you can see John's tires move and the car move slightly, which I believe I can see that. But some people, of course, there's deniers. So there's that. Anyway, so that's 5:07 a.m. Karen's leaving the house to go look for John. 5:08, you can see her traveling down the driveway on John's Ring footage. He's got Ring footage in the front of the house and Ring footage on the driveway there, which is like the back door or whatever. And then at 5:08, Jen calls John, and it goes unanswered and deleted. 5:09 a.m., Jen calls John, unanswered, deleted. 5:11 a.m., SUV seen traveling toward the waterfall bar. So Karen is leaving John's and heading towards the waterfall. So she's going back to the bar. Maybe she thinks I don't know why she went to the bar first and not to the Albert home, the 34 Fairview Road. I don't know why she didn't go there first. Maybe she thought that he started walking back to the bar or something. I don't know. Or maybe she thought that she would hit it on the way there and drive around. I don't know. Not really sure. Maybe it was on the way there from where she was coming. I don't know. Anyways, all right. So 5:11. Wait, where did I stop? Oh, 5:15. She's seen at the waterfall. 5:16 a.m. Karen calls Jen. It goes answered. They talk for a little bit. I believe this is because Karen is heading to Jen's house. So Karen was probably like, how do I get to your home? But Jen deleted it from her call log. Keep that in mind. Even though, why would it be deleted? It seems like a harmless thing. Anyways, 5:18 a.m., SUV seen traveling towards Washington and Dedham. So remember, she's going back to that Fairview home. So she's back in that, zoom all the way back. But so she's heading in this direction right here. So she's left the waterfall, and now she's heading to here to go back to Fairview Road. All right. Okay, here we are. Sorry. So that was 5:18. Next up, Karen calls Jen, and it's answered. 5:25. Jen calls John. It goes unanswered. Both of these are deleted. 5:26 a.m. Jen calls Karen. It's answered and deleted. Jen calls John. Unanswered, deleted at 5:31. So remember, we're just going to go through all these calls because I feel like they're important. 5:32 a.m. Jen calls Karen. Answered but deleted. 5:33 a.m., Jen calls someone named Tom Beatty. I don't know. We don't know who this is, but she calls him several times, and it goes unanswered multiple times. And then finally he calls her and they talk for a few minutes. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see kind of the progression there. So we're at 5:30 a.m. Everybody's up and about now. Karen is awake. She's called Jen McCabe and she's called Carrie saying, John hasn't come home. Help me find him. What's going on? Karen has left the house so abruptly that she backed up into John's car, cracking her own taillight. So now she's driving around and she's heading back to Fairview after she passed the Waterfall Bar. So that is kind of where we're at. I just wanted to do a recap. So now Jen is calling John and everybody frantically. She calls this Tom Beatty person 5:30 a.m. and it goes unanswered, but all these calls are deleted. 5:39 a.m. Jen's phone location leaves her residence and they arrive at 34 Fairview. So around this time, Carrie followed. Wait, that can't be the same time. I think it is though. Oh, because it's Jen's phone location, which is more accurate and true, whereas Carrie's statement is. So according to Carrie Roberts' statement, she is following now behind at 5:39. She's following behind Karen and Jen. So Jen is supposed to be. They're supposed to all be meeting up. And Jen is going to drive Karen's car because Karen's frantic. And Carrie is coming to meet them so that she can be the driver and they can all drive looking together. So, but Jen's phone location, the actual data pulled by the geofencing location, whatever it is, I'm not an expert in it, but the expert that pulled the information, they say that this is when Jen's phone actually leaves her location. But Carrie's statement, like I said, is they can't both be the same. Anyways, Jen's phone location arrives at John's residence at 5:46. Moving on. So they decide that they're going to go back to John's house, drop Karen's car off. So Jen drives Karen's car back to John's house. And now we're going to get in Carrie's car and drive looking for John. So we're in Carrie's car and Jen's calling John. It goes unanswered and she deletes it. At 5:52, she calls Tom Beatty again. Deleted and unanswered. All right, moving on to the next time frame. We've got Jen's phone location and she's now leaving John's residence. So according to wait. Now we're driving. Now we're in Carrie's car. Sorry, we weren't driving yet. So this was all at John's house. They stayed at John's house for a while, which one other creator, I really can't remember who it was. I might have been the Glarer, had said that this might be like a stall tactic. Oh, maybe it was Melanie Little, that this was a stall tactic to not go back to 34 Fairview Road right away, to bring Karen's car back to John's, because really, like, if Karen was out and driving, you could have left, like, she could have come to 34 Fairview, dropped it off there, and like they could have gone, they could have all met up at 34 Fairview instead of driving back to Karen's. And because Karen came back to the house, she meets up with them at Carrie's house, or at Jen's house, sorry. So anyways, where were we? Jen's phone location leaves John's residence. Oh, stall tactic. Do you think it could have been a stall tactic to go back to John's and then they went like looking for him there to see if he came home? That was, I'm sure they said, let's just look at home, see if he's back. And but then they were there for nearly half an hour. Anyways, so Jen's phone leaves the location of John's house at 5:52. 5:57 a.m. Jen's phone is near the waterfall, so they go back to the waterfall. So it must be on the way. And then 5:57 a.m. Jen calls Tom Beatty again and is answered for 2 seconds. 2 seconds. What can you say in 2 seconds? Like, can't talk, bye. Probably, right? Like, can't talk now? And then you hang up or something? I don't know. Because she was in the car with Karen and Carrie at this time. So I don't know what you can say in 2 seconds. And who is this guy? Because she keeps calling him. All right, anyways. 6:03 a.m. Jen's phone location arrives at 34 Fairview Road. So they finally arrive back at the home. Same time, Jen calls 911 because Karen screams, "Carrie, stop the car, I see him. And so she gets out, she runs to go see him. Remember, Jen and Carrie say, "We didn't see him. We were so confused. We didn't know what she was talking about. We couldn't see a body. Body, what body?" And then Jen calls 911, but for some reason she deletes this call. I'm not sure why. But she does call 911, and she's on the phone with them for about 3 minutes. And remember, we have a recording of what Jen was saying. I'm gonna have to play that in one of my episodes, because there's a recording of what she is saying to the dispatcher. You can't hear the dispatcher, but because Karen had been calling John at the same time and John's voicemail picked up, the voicemail recording picked up Jen's conversation with the dispatcher. So we hear her demeanor, we hear how she describes the situation, and it just feels a little off, if you ask me. So I'm gonna, I'll see if I can add it to the end of this video, because there's so many things I need you to see as well, because we keep talking, there's so much. There's just so much. We've only touched the surface. All right. Where do we leave off? So she talks to Tom, 2 seconds. 6:03 a.m. I'm sorry. Yeah. So they arrive. Karen sees the body. 6:03. Jen calls 911 at 6:04. So like a minute later, Officer CvrUp is the first officer on the scene. So she's still talking to the dispatcher, and according to Officer CvrUp's report, he arrives there at 6:04, and so that would be like almost immediately they dispatched him out there. So he was near the area. 6:07 a.m. Jen calls Nicole Albert, so meaning her sister, the homeowner, at 6:07 a.m. And so she's done with her 911 call. She calls Nicole, her sister, probably telling her, like, "Hey, are you coming out here? There's a body on your lawn." And this call was deleted from Jen's cell phone records. 6:08 a.m., Jen called Nicole again. It's answered for 7 seconds and also deleted. At the same time, she takes a screenshot of Brian Albert's contact info. So she's not getting through to Nicole. She needs to talk to Brian. So Brian, her brother-in-law, Nicole's husband, also homeowner. So Brian, she takes a screenshot of Brian's contact info, presumably to call him later. All right, so it's 6:23 a.m. Jen calls Brian. Okay, so she calls him, yes, a few minutes, there's a little time gap in between, but Jen's probably dealing with stuff on the scene, because she is on the scene outside of 34 Fairview, whereas Nicole and Brian are inside the house and never come out. So Jen calls Brian, unanswered. So Brian's not even answering his phone, and Jen deletes this. 6:23 also, same time. Jen searches, how long does it take to digest food? So at this point, she's trying to cover her butt from the 2:27 a.m. search of how long to dine whole, and now she's trying to recreate it. So, but this time she searched the wrong thing. She accidentally must have clicked on how long does it take to digest food. And then seconds later, Jen searches how long tie-dye in however you sicked. So she really spelled it wrong in this one at 6:23. So she just cannot spell is part of the problem. 6:24 a.m. Sergeant Link arrives at 34 Fairview. So he's one of the sergeants that arrives shortly thereafter. We get police reports from him, so it's important to note that. Next up, 6:24 a.m. Jen searches house long to die in cold for a second time. So now she recreated the first search that she did at 2:27 a.m. Finally, she gets it right. She gets the wrong spelling right this time. And then 6:35 a.m. Jen calls Matt McCabe, her husband. It goes answered, but she deletes it. So she answered. They talk for a few minutes, and it goes deleted or gets deleted. 6:38 a.m. CPAC, or the special unit, is contacted to come and investigate the crime scene. This is when Trooper Proctor is called and notified about the scene. It doesn't say what time he arrives there, but it does say, he's called and he's notified. But we don't know exactly, there's question about when he actually does go there. So 6:47 a.m., Jen receives call from Matt, and they talk, and she deletes it. They talk very briefly. All these calls are, remember, very short. 6:52 a.m., Jen rejects a call from Matt, and she deletes that. Sorry, hubby. Not talking to you. 7:21 a.m., Jen calls Karen, goes unanswered, and it's deleted. But then at 7:21, Jen receives a call from Karen. So Jen calls Karen misses it, and Karen calls back right away. Both of them are deleted from Jen McCabe's phone call logs. All right. 7:24 a.m., Sergeant Link leaves the scene, and he returns to Canton PD to do paperwork or whatnot. So that is according to the grand jury testimony at 7:24 a.m. According to Sergeant Link, he leaves and returns to the police department. All right, let me take another sip. My throat gets dry when I talk. Sorry. Okay, so our next time frame, we're getting there, guys. We're getting there. Our next time frame, and these are pretty fast because they're mostly just calls. So 7:33 a.m., Jen calls Carrie, answered, deleted. 7:49 a.m., Jen calls Carrie, answered, deleted. 7:50 a.m., John is pronounced deceased at Good Samaritan Hospital. Okay, so this is hours later. So we find him at 6:03 a.m., but he's cold to the touch. He doesn't have a breath, or if he does, it's very shallow. They have a hard time finding it, and he looks like he's in bad condition at 6:03, but he isn't pronounced deceased until 7:50 at the hospital. So I'm not sure what took so long, but it's possible because he was so cold they tried to warm him first to see if his body would respond, and it did not. Not in the way that they had hoped. So anyways, at 7:59 a.m., Massachusetts State Police assume their jurisdiction because they find out that a police officer has passed. So now it's going on to the state police. We've moved on from Canton PD. Well, not moved on, but we've moved up from Canton PD. I guess like we're continually adding more investigators. All right, so 8:30 a.m., Julie Albert arrives at 34 Fairview. So her phone, oh no, this isn't phone, sorry. Julie Albert is the sister-in-law of Brian and Nicole Albert. And remember, she was out there drinking with them that night. So she arrives that morning at 34 Fairview. She's got donuts, she says. She brings them for Brian Jr. because it was just his birthday that they were out celebrating for. So she brings donuts over to 34 Fairview. And at this point, it is when she was told there was an accident. So this is when she first finds out. But it's not clear when the police ever, entered the home or looked to see, what was going on inside the house. Nothing like that. All right, so 8:38 a.m., Jen receives a call from Canton PD. And why she deletes this, I don't know, but she receives a call from Canton PD. And then at 8:45 a.m., Jen receives a call from Carrie. It goes answered and deleted. So she's just going through and deleting everything. She got, I think she got panicked and just deleted everything and then was like, oh crap, it looks bad if I delete stuff. So then she, I don't know. I think she panicked and forgot that, they can do forensic searches. All right, 8:50 a.m., Jen receives a call from Tom Beatty. Finally, he calls her back, but it goes missed. And she deletes this. 8:59 a.m., Jen calls Sergeant Lank, answered. So she's calling Canton PD back, probably. Jen receives a call from Carrie, and it is answered at 8:59 a.m. And at this point, it looks like she stopped deleting these calls. So these are on her log. 8:59 a.m. 9 a.m., Jen calls Sergeant Link and asks him to return to 34 Fairview because she remembered something and she wants to add to her statement. So just remember that. Jen McCabe calls the sergeant back to give more information just very shortly after she probably gets a chance to consult with everybody. And look at how many times she calls Carrie, she calls her husband, she calls Tom Beatty. She's calling all these people. So she has a chance to change her tune, change her story. So anyways, that's just an observation. Anyways, so she calls Sergeant Lang back to the home, and she suddenly remembers Karen saying, I hope I didn't hit him. This was while they were driving around looking for him. She suddenly remembers that that Karen had said that. At 9:08 a.m., Karen's blood is drawn at Good Samaritan. This is approximately 8.5 hours later after she dropped John off. So what they're doing, taking her blood 8.5 hours later, is beyond me, and I don't understand because it doesn't make any sense. But they did this and tried to multiply. Well, this times this because it was this much later, she would have been this times drunker, and they give some statistic of how drunk she was, and it was a big variable too. So it's just really unreliable. That's what came from the Commonwealth. All right, at 9:30 a.m., 4 calls take place between Jen and Carrie between 9:30 and 10:40. So they're on the phone 4 different times, 4 short separate calls. 10:55 a.m., Jen receives a call from Trooper Proctor. So now she's talking to the Massachusetts State Police. Before she was talking to Canton Police, now she's talking to State Police. 11:16 a.m., Jen's phone location leaves Fairview. So she's finally leaving Fairview for the second time. She arrived there at 6 in the morning or whatever, 6:03 when they found John, and then now she's just leaving at 11:16 a.m. Jen's phone arrives at her home at 11:22. 11:33 a.m., Proctor and Buchanan, these are the two investigating from Massachusetts State Police, the two head detectives. They interviewed Jen at 11:30 a.m. So this is back at Jen's house. And Jen receives a call at the same time, 11:30 a.m., from Brian, and it goes answered. So my question is, why was she talking to Brian right at the beginning of her interview with Proctor and Buchanan? I have big questions. I have a lot of questions, and I want to know what that was about. This was at the same time. Anyway, so at 12:15, Proctor and Buchanan interview Matt McCabe. So they move on from Jen, and they start talking to Matt. During that interview, while Matt's being interviewed, I presume, Jen talks to Brian and Carrie twice and Proctor again from 12:20 to 12:49. So at some point Proctor left and she calls him again. So she talked to him during her interview. So he called, probably set up an interview. So he comes for an interview and then she calls him again after he leaves. And she's calling all the other individuals that were there that night, all throughout the day. All right, so 12:53 p.m., Jen deletes screenshot of Brian's contact info. Remember, she took a screenshot of Brian's contact info so she could call him when they were sitting outside of the house and EMT was arriving and she had just called 911. She was calling her sister and her brother-in-law to come out of their house, which they never did. Never. Never, never. All right, 1:04 to 5:27 p.m. is our next time frame. We're really getting there, guys, I swear. 1:04 p.m. An additional 9 phone calls takes place on Jen's phone with multiple people. She talked to Tom Beatty for 3 minutes and 14 seconds, and that's important. So she talked to multiple people during this time. There were 9 phone calls. One of those phone calls was with Tom Beatty, and she finally talked to him for 3.5 minutes, or 3 minutes and 14 seconds. And that was going on from 1:04 to 2:22. At 2:31 p.m., Patrolman Nicholas Barros is informed of retrieving Karen's SUV, and this is located now at Karen's parents' house. So at some point throughout the afternoon or morning, Karen, I'm sure she didn't want to be home alone and didn't want to go to John's house all alone, so she went to her parents' home. So her SUV is parked at her parents' driveway, and this patrolman Barros is being notified at 12:31 p.m. to go get the SUV. At 12:36 p.m., 3 more calls on Jen's phone that take place between Brian and Nicole. Nicole twice. Homeowners she talks to twice. All right. Then 3 p.m., Trooper Proctor calls Officer Barros. So remember, Proctor is the state police trooper that he's the lead detective of this case. So, but he's with Massachusetts State Police. And I'm assuming Nicholas Barros is with the Canton PD, but I'm not entirely sure. He might be a branch of the state police too. Anyways, so Trooper calls Barros. They talk about going and getting there and picking up the car. So at 3:43 p.m., there are 3 more calls on Jen's phone between Carrie twice and Nicole. And that goes on from 3:43 to 4:04. So they're just like calling each other nonstop all day. 4:12 p.m., footage of the SUV being towed from Karen's parents' residence. So they had a Ring or Google, whatever it is. They had some kind of video footage of that actually has a timestamp, and it says when the SUV that shows on camera the diamond towing coming and picking up Karen's car at her parents' house. At 4:30 p.m., according to written statements by Proctor and Buchanan, they arrived at Karen's parents' house at 4:30, but we just saw that the tow truck got towed at 4:12, so keep that in mind. Proctor states that he notices damage to the taillight. Well, if it was just towed at 4:12 and we have video evidence that it was towed at 4:12, how at 4:30 was Proctor and Buchanan or Proctor noticing taillight damage? I want to know. At 4:59 p.m., 7 more calls on Jen's phone between Matt, Nicole, and Carrie. So she's just, and that's 7 calls between these 3. She's just calling everybody. And there were even more individuals that weren't involved in the night, but I didn't even include them in the timeline because I didn't feel that they were all that relevant. The Tom Beatty one I really thought was relevant, though. That one was interesting because she kept calling him from like 5:30 on. All right, so 5:25 p.m. Troopers Dunn and DeSico interview Carrie Roberts. At 5:27 p.m., Jen calls Nicole, and this time it's answered. Okay, so Jen calls her sister, and she answers it. That doesn't get deleted. Now we're at pretty much the end of the day here, and we can move on. So January 29th, we're still on 5:30 p.m. Trooper Proctor and Buchanan seize, according to their paperwork, according to their statements, they seize the SUV and they drive behind Diamond Towing as it brings it to Canton PD. So they are supposedly like the watchers of this car being towed. But they're saying it happens at 5:30, but we know we have evidence that it happened at 4:12. All right, so also at 5:30, Proctor and Buchanan seize Karen's phone. Also at 5:30, another special team from the Massachusetts State Police is assigned, and they are asked to conduct, they're assigned to this case and asked to conduct a second search of 34 Fairview. So now we're going on to search 3. So Canton PD, they found some glass shards, and that was about it. Some blood. Now we're going in for a second search. So just keep that in mind. 5:30 p.m. still. A black Nike, one clear piece, and two red pieces of taillight were found at the scene. So now, like I said, the second special unit is conducting a second search of the home at 5:30 at night, mind you. And this is where they find John's other shoe and pieces of the taillight, broken pieces of the taillight. But Proctor and Buchanan saying that they seized this is important, why this matters. So at 5:30, they're saying that they seized the car at 5:30. So they're putting themselves at Karen's parents at 5:30. Whereas we already know they should have been gone by then, or at least, on their way out, because the car was towed at 4:12. So I doubt they would have still been there that long. But they're trying to put themselves there at 5:30. Because at 5:30, they find pieces of the taillight. It's important. This is important. The timeline matters. The way that things are done matter. All right, so at 5:51 p.m., 5 more calls were made or received on Jen's phone between Matt, Carrie, and Nicole. So the people from that night. More calls, more gossip, more talking. More dates that are important to remember. So January 30th, Proctor and Buchanan interview Canton firefighter Katie Laughlin. So she's the one that arrives on scene. So that's the next day after John is found. So they interview her. January 31st is when John's autopsy takes place. So 2 days later, conducted by Dr. Scorty Bello. Whoops. Okay, February 2nd, sorry. February 2nd, Jen turns her phone over to law enforcement. So this is some time later. She could have had lots of time to delete things and change things, and she did. She did delete things. February 4th, Chief Berkowitz sees a piece of taillight in the yard while driving by. What? So the chief of police, chief of the Canton Police Department, I believe it's Canton Police, he just happens to be driving by 34 Fairview that some days later, and a piece of taillight he pops out to him. It's, I don't know. I don't know. It was like early morning when he said he was driving by, coming off of his night shift or whatever to go home, and he saw out of the corner of his eye or whatever, he saw a piece of tail light. So he stopped to do another third search for tail light pieces. Next. More important events to note. April 18th is when Turtle Boy started the Free Karen Read movement through his website, his blog, his YouTube channel. He started getting people interested in this case, and it's really taken shape and the movement has picked up like tremendously. And she's got protesters every time she's got a hearing. She's got protesters standing outside with signs, and now Turtle Boy has protesters too. So, anyways, it's become a big thing, especially if you're local. I am not local, but if I could and had the means, I would absolutely be supporting Turtle Boy and Karen Read at every hearing too. My opinion, my humble thoughts. Next, in May, we are told that Canton Animal Control writes a quarantine for Chloe after a skin piercing. And then we are told that shortly thereafter, Chloe is rehomed to somewhere in Vermont, which, okay. But we don't have proof. We can't find documentation on it. I believe this is just what we're being told. So, I know that they have subpoenaed, and we might even get into that when we get into John's injuries, because it has to do with John's, canine injuries. Canine DNA is that on him. So we'll get into that in an episode with John's injuries and Chloe. But yeah, so we're told she was rehomed. But if she had been aggressive in a fight with John, it's possible. Dog owners out there, tell me if I'm wrong, but pretty sure that once a dog bites someone, they get an urge to bite again. And not all of them, but some of them. And if this dog already had aggression problems, which we're told it may have, but the Commonwealth is saying, no, it never had aggression problems. There's never been anyone. And we're trying to get the records for it to see, but can't. Or the defense is. And they're denying, they're trying to deny records of Chloe. But anyways, June 9th, Karen Read is indicted by the grand jury. This is all 2022. October 5th, Trooper Proctor finally interviews Julie Nagel for the first time. Remember, she's the one that gets picked up by her brother Ryan. And why is she only getting interviewed October 5th? She should have been interviewed right away. Anyways, there are a lot of people that didn't get interviewed until way later. November 17th, Brian lists his childhood home and longtime residence up for sale. So what is that about? This home had been in the family, what I heard, like for years, and suddenly you put it up for sale. It just seems odd. You get rid of your dog and you put your home up for sale in the span of a few months. February 17th, 34 Fairview is sold. So we're in 2023 now, February 17th, and property is sold. So it no longer belongs to the Alberts. There's another family who owns it, unrelated. All right, April 10th, Colin Albert is served with grand jury subpoena, and he is served by 2 FBI agents, which, I don't know, I'd be, very scared if 2 FBI agents were serving me a subpoena for grand jury testimony. Remember, Colin Albert is the nephew of the homeowners, and he has a beef with John, or had a beef with John, and lived on the same street as John. July 6th, Trooper Proctor interviews Caitlin Brian Jr., and Colin for the first time. So over a year and a half later, Trooper Proctor, the state police, interview the kids for the first time. These are the children of the homeowners, and so of both. So Caitlin and Brian are Brian and Nicole's children, and Colin is the child of Chris Albert. Remember, he's the one that owns a pizza shop, and his wife is Julie. So Chris and Brian are brothers, I believe. All right, so July 24th, Sergeant Buchanan interviews Jen regarding harassment and intimidation. So during this time frame, if you know anything about Turtle Boy, if you've been watching, the movement for Karen Reed is picking up. People are starting to put the pressure on the Canton police and the Massachusetts State Police because they feel like this case is very fishy, and to me it seems like it is. But so they're starting to put pressure on their organizations, their institutions that are supposed to be protecting them. They're like, hey, we want answers, and we want answers from the people that were there too. So Turtle Boy, Aiden Carney, he had been very vocal. I believe he called them a couple times, but he did speak with them or speak about them on his YouTube channel a lot. But not in a threatening way, but in a way like, hey, if you guys know the truth, why don't you come out and say something? You know, he would say things like that. So the Commonwealth, in my opinion, totally took all of his things out of context and used it to try to be like, hey, he's intimidating these witnesses. So that's what this was all about. So I believe here Jen is starting it up by saying, because they were doing like rolling rallies where they were driving by the people's homes and holding up the Free Karen Reed signs and things like that. So Jen wanted like a restraining order against Aiden, and I know that's one of the reasons why she went to talk to Sergeant Buchanan, because she did go to court at some point and try to get a restraining order, and it was denied because what he's doing is free speech. All right, so July 26th is when Sergeant Buchanan interviews Colin Albert now regarding harassment and intimidation. So Colin is now saying, hey, I'm being harassed and intimidated by Turtle Boy and all of his followers and yada, yada, yada. And they're saying they're threatened and fearful and whatnot. And, you know, maybe so. But at the same time, what Turtle Boy is doing is it's all covered under the free speech, First Amendment. All right, so August 10th, Proctor and Buchanan interview Lucky, sorry, I said Lucy. Proctor and Buchanan interview Lucky Lawfriend, remember the plow driver, for the first time. The first time. So this is the first time that they're ever even talking to the plow driver, who, remember, stated that there was a Ford Edge parked where Karen had last been, her SUV had last been seen. So it was presumed that she was the last one that hit him. Maybe this Ford Edge hit him, I don't know, but it did look like he got into a fight too. So let's try to look at all the evidence. But anyways, all right, moving on. This is the last of it, I swear. Okay, so August 25th of this past year, Michael Morrissey, or the DA, the district attorney of Canton, or I'm sorry, of Norfolk County, which Canton falls in, came out with a very bizarre public statement. And I'm going to read it for you because it's very, very strange. And I just want you to have a picture of him. Remember, that's Michael Proctor, the district attorney. Here, I'm going to read to you now what he said in a public address. It's on YouTube. I'm going to have to link this one too, so bear with me. But I want to read it out loud because I kind of want to dissect it and take it apart. So here's his statement. This will be the first statement of its kind in my designated office of Norfolk District Attorney. So right off the bat, he's saying he's never done anything like this. And he says, the harassment of witnesses in the murder prosecution of Karen Reed is absolutely baseless. It should be an outrage to any decent person, and it needs to stop. Innuendo is not evidence. False narratives are not evidence. However, what evidence does show is that John O'Keefe never entered the home at 34 Fairview Road in Canton the night he died. You stop there because we have phone location from John that said he took steps after Karen would have left the home. So he had took steps, and not just steps on his watch, his Apple Health watch, but he ascended and descended flights of stairs. So it wasn't just that he took steps, he was taking steps up and down stairs. And how do you refute that? I don't know. How do you refute House Long to Die in Cold done at 2:27? But they're trying to refute that too. They have ways of word salading everything that it doesn't make sense anymore. All right, so moving on. Michael Morrissey continues. Location data from his phone recovered from the lawn beneath his body when he was transported to the hospital shows that his phone did not enter that home. That's false. Like you can't even state that. And I just said it shows that he went up and down flights of stairs. Continuing on. 11 people have given statements that they did not see John O'Keefe enter the home at 34 Fairview that night. 0 people have said that they saw him enter the home. 0. No one. Some have, without any evidence, pointed to 18-year-old Colin Albert, a nephew of the homeowner, and accused him of attacking John O'Keefe as he entered the home. But phone evidence shows that O'Keefe never entered the home at all. Testimony from witnesses tell us that 18-year-old Colin Albert had left his uncle's home before John O'Keefe and Karen Reed had arrived outside the residence. Okay, so they're saying, well, first of all, they keep saying that John's phone shows that he never entered the house, which you can say it as many times as you want, but that doesn't make it true. And then we're allowed to give our opinions. We, as Americans, have a right to voice our opinions and state we believe it might have been somebody else and not Karen. So, and we're looking at factual documents. We're getting our evidence from factual, well, as factual as they can be, as honest as the people were that wrote them or made their statements. We're getting those from court documents, which, police reports and things like that, witness testimony. So that's where we're getting it from. We're not just pulling it out of thin air, Michael Morrissey. All right, so moving on. Testimony from witnesses tell us that 18-year-old Colin Albert had left his uncle's home before Karen Reed entered the home. Okay, there was no fight inside that home. How do you know? Officers never went into that home. No officers went into that home looking, investigating, searching, seeing if the broken cocktail glass that was out there, was it from the bar? Was it from the waterfall bar? Was it from the home? Nobody looked inside to see if anybody else was injured or hurt. Which, wouldn't you at least want to do a wellness check? I don't understand why. But anyways, they say there was no fight inside the home. Morrissey continues, John O'Keefe did not enter the home. So says you. Sorry, that's my commentary. Back to his statement. Colin Albert, a young man being vilified, was not present when Reed's vehicle and John O'Keefe arrived on the street. This is a false narrative. Colin Albert didn't commit murder. Jennifer McCabe, Matt McCabe, and Brian Albert. These people were not part of a conspiracy and certainly did not commit murder or any crime that night. Well, how do you know? Because they were treated as witnesses the whole time and not as suspects. They were given special treatment because of who they are. Because witness statements were taken all together in one big room with Brian Albert, the homeowner, in the room with everybody. So how is that even? That wouldn't happen. In a real case, we would be locked away in a room by ourselves with an investigator talking to us, trying to get info, trying to snitch on one another. and telling us lies to do that. But anyways, so Michael Morrissey says he's being vilified. It's a false narrative. Colin Albert didn't commit murder. Jennifer McCabe didn't commit murder. They have been forthcoming with authority, providing statements, and have not engaged in any cover-up. Okay, so says you. They are not suspects in any crime. They are merely witnesses to the case. To have them accused of murder is outrageous. To have them harassed and intimidated based on false narratives and accusations is wrong. They are witnesses doing what our justice system asks of them. The autopsy of John O'Keefe was conducted by a forensic pathologist from the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. The doctor found that the injuries that left John helpless in the cold were not a result of a fight. There's a lot of questionable things about the medical examiner's findings, and the fact that those scratches or the lacerations on his arm that they call abrasions are actually lacerations from dog teeth. And attorney Melanie Little just had a dog specialist, a dog trainer on, and he talked about dog bites. He said he's seen more than his fair share of dog bites in his life. He's been around dogs his whole life, and he said without a doubt those are teeth that were probably, because he probably had long sleeves on, the dog was probably getting shallow bites and he wasn't getting good bites, and that's why he was like digging in, and there were multiple bites taking place, and it wasn't likely a trained dog. So there you have it. That's kind of what definitely watch the episode because it's amazing. All right, so where did I leave off? The autopsy of John O'Keefe was conducted, and they believe there was no fight. She further found that the line of abrasions on his arm was abrasions, they say, but they're lacerations. The line of abrasions on his arm was consistent with blunt trauma, not an animal attack. A grand jury of everyday citizens heard the documented evidence and testimony before making a decision. But again, grand juries are secret, and grand juries only hear one side. They only hear the prosecution side. They do not hear defense. Nobody is there for the defense to defend them. So nobody presents any kind of evidence that might show otherwise than what the prosecution is showing. So grand juries are pretty one-sided to begin with. All right, so I keep losing my spot here. Grand jury of everyday citizens found him to be the grand jury of everyday citizens heard the documented evidence and testimony before making a decision. The subject of that murder indictment enjoys the constitutional rights of the presumption of innocence. So he's saying that Karen Reed is presumed innocent. He's saying, even though a grand jury said that, she is likely to be guilty, and that's why they indicted her. All right, so why should the witnesses who have committed no crime be afforded less by members of the community? So they're saying, Karen is given the benefit of the doubt. Why couldn't the members of the community be? Well, because they were there that night, and they have things to answer to. There are so many questions in this case that we need an answer. But anyways, they should not be harassed for telling the government what they heard or saw. I'm asking the Canton community and everyone who feels invested in this case to bear all the actual evidence at trial before assigning guilt to people who have done nothing wrong. And certainly, before taking it upon yourself to harass citizens who evidence shows have done nothing in this matter but come forward and be a witness, we try people in the court and not in the internet for a reason. The internet has no rules of evidence. The internet has no punishment for perjury. And the internet does not know all facts. Conspiracy theories are not evidence. The idea that multiple police department, AMT, fire personnel, and medical examiner and prosecuting agencies are joined in taking on a vast conspiracy should be seen for what it is. completely contrary to the evidence and a desperate attempt to reassign guilt. Michael Proctor, the state police trooper who, being accused of planting evidence outside of 34 Fairview, was never at 34 Fairview Road on the day of the incident. All right, so now you're seeing the quote there. On the day of the incident. Proctor and his state police partner traveled around together the entire day while other officers were processing 34 Fairview. Oh man, go back. In addition to having no opportunity to plant the evidence, as has been suggested, Proctor would have no motive to do so. Trooper Proctor had no close personal relationship with any of the parties involved in the investigation and had no conflict. So we know that that is not true because we have pictures of Michael Proctor with the children of Jen McCabe and at weddings with the McCabe or with the Alberts. And we know, not just at a wedding, but like in the wedding party, Colin Albert was in one of the Albert's wedding parties. So like we have evidentiary proof and photographic proof that they know each other, but even the DA is saying like, hey, there's no conflict of interest here, nothing to see here, they're fine. All right. He goes on to state, and there is no reason to step out of this investigation. Every suggestion to the contrary is a lie. This should be seen for what it is and used as a pretext to attack and harass others. What is happening to the witnesses, some with no actual involvement in this case, is wrong. It is contrary to the American values of fairness and the constitutional values of a fair trial. It needs to stop. I am releasing this quoted statement rather than holding a news conference because my remarks need to be so narrowly tailored to the issue at hand while the prosecution is pending in Superior Court. But the message is the same. What is happening to these innocent people, these witnesses, is wrong and needs to stop. So that is the wonderful PSA we got from Michael Morrissey. And that was done April 25th of last year. Go lay down. Go. Lay down. All right, so September 25th at 6 p.m., Jen's car is parked outside Trooper Proctor's residence. So one of the people that listened to the Turtle Boy show or watched the Turtle Boy show, they were by Proctor's house. They had seen Jen McCabe's car there and confirmed it later was confirmed that it was Jen's car. And then the same day at 7:30 p.m., Carrie's car was seen in front of the Proctor's home also, and she was outside seen outside speaking to Elizabeth Proctor, who is Michael Proctor's wife. So she was definitely these all definitely have some kind of known, there's a familiarity with them, whether they're acquaintances or not. They definitely know each other, and there should be a conflict of interest of these two women going over to the lead investigator's home. All right, so October 11th, Turtle Boy was arrested for witness intimidation and conspiracy. And mind you, he was arrested for finding out that Jen was at Trooper Proctor's house. But the interesting thing is that Karen Reed's lawyers actually argued this fact that these two were at the house. They're using it as a reason to, get this trial, to quash this trial, to either get the charges dropped or whatever they're trying to do. So they can use it, for their ammo against the Commonwealth. But Turtle Boy is sitting in prison for it, and his rights are being violated. just because he spoke out and found the truth and he's helping to take this corruption down. And that's my opinion why he got arrested. Anyways, this was the first arrest though, and he got arraigned and was out the next day. He was arrested and charged for that. All right. November 22nd, DA Morrissey sends a letter to the FBI, and there's going to be a couple letters to the FBI that he sends, or things that with FBI involvement. Because we know now that FBI is investigating the investigation of this case. So that means they're looking into the DA's office. So the DA is writing letters to the FBI saying, like, hey, there's conflict of interest here. You shouldn't be looking at us. Go somewhere else. You know, they're trying to divert. Don't look over here. And yeah, that seems to be what's going on, in my opinion. All right. So December 20th, Turtle Boy is indicted by a grand jury, so he gets even more charges on him for that. And then the 22nd, he's arraigned in Superior Court for these witness intimidation charges, and he tries to get he was given a restraining order at the first arraignment, which would have been October 12th. He was given limitations on being able to talk about or speak to the individual, so like Jen McCabe and Brian Albert, because they were in Colin Albert, because they all felt intimidated, whatever, because they're witnesses. But the only thing Turtle Boy has ever said is tell the truth, come forward and tell the truth. So I don't know how that's intimidating. But so he got some more indictments. He goes to the Superior Court December 22nd, and the previous charges were lifted. So he was, you know, they were like, this is not my jurisdiction. I can't do anything with this. So charges thrown out, whatever. So he was able to, again, talk about these people. And then shortly thereafter, Turtle Boy Aiden gets into an argument with an ex-girlfriend. I'm not going to get into all the details, but let's just say they get into an argument. That same night, an emergency restraining order was issued by the people that are trying to charge Turtle Boy, mind you. And this was issued at 11 p.m. So Turtle Boy goes over to his ex-girlfriend's house. An argument ensues, yada yada. Then the emergency restraining order is issued at 11 p.m. at night. Turtle Boy has no idea he has a restraining order against him to see this ex-girlfriend. So things happen. He goes over there. They talked. He doesn't even know that she's a witness in the case, because they made her a witness in the case. And then a BOLO, or a be on the lookout, is issued, and Turtle Boy himself turns himself in. And this is all like right around Christmas, and I believe that the Commonwealth did this maliciously and on purpose so that he could not spend time with his children on Christmas morning, which they succeeded. So good job, Commonwealth. You're shitty people. All right, next. March 12th is the next important date, and that is going to be Karen Reed's jury trial, if it goes to that, because as you can see, there's so much here that gives reasonable doubt. So it just baffles my mind that he even got this far. But as we know, when things are hidden and we don't look far enough and we don't look deep enough, sometimes there is corruption underlying the surfaces. So it's important to remember the reason that we were here, and that is for John O'Keefe and finding true and actual justice for him. And Karen Reed, if she did not back up into John, as the Commonwealth is stating, which I believe she did not, then she's a victim too, having to go through a trial, having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on attorneys to fight this, to fight a huge injustice. So Karen and John was a hero. John was a police officer. John didn't deserve the ending that he got. And people in that house, in my opinion, threw him out like trash. And he was a police officer. He was a hero. He was a father to his niece and nephew. And we can't forget that. And that's why I'm doing this for John, for Karen, for Turtle Boy. All right. Well, thank you very much. And I hope you enjoyed the timeline episode 4. Join me for next time. Thanks. Bye.